Hey folks, Scott Bradley here, and welcome to Torpus University. Each episode has two parts, the free part that you're hearing now, and a subscriber-only bonus part that you can access by subscribing to the Torpus University Patreon. My guest in this episode is Sarah Reich, a tap dancer that is quite literally redefining what it means to be a tap dancer in the 21st century. Through her musical collective, the Tap Music Project, Sarah has educated an entire generation of young tap dancers from all around the world and given them the tools and the inspiration to develop their own unique style as both dancers and musicians. Sarah is a great speaker, and it's inspiring to hear from someone that respects her craft so much, to the point that she's willing to promote the art above herself. She's a great example of an artist that understands that the way to truly find success is through leading an entire community to success. And I had a lot of fun chatting with her. So let's get into it. Please welcome Sarah Reich. All right, what's up, Sarah Reich?
What is up, Scott Bradley? Happy to be here.
You know, we were just talking as we were setting this up about how crazy, all this was. But where were you? Were you on tour? Were you doing your own thing? Were you?
I had just gotten back home from a lot of crazy traveling in February. And I was just about to go back to New York. I had a gig in Connecticut at a performing arts high school to collaborate with some students there. I was supposed to go to Stockholm, Mexico, take my intensive everywhere. So I had to cancel a lot.
Yeah, it was so weird. Just, you made it back in time, which was kind of great. I guess it could be worse, just being stuck somewhere where you don't live and, having to kind of risk it on a flight. But, it was just it happened so fast. And I think that there were so many musicians that just got, everybody's plans got changed just like that. Musicians, we travel a lot. Mm-hmm. If we're lucky, we get to travel a ton. So anyway, so I wanted to have you on because I think you did something really special. Beyond being an artist, you've actually managed to create a community around your art, which is something that I think only the most successful performers are able to do. I think that takes a lot of thinking beyond yourself. And it's honoring the art in the purest form. And you've done that with tap dance. So for those that don't know Sarah Reich, you should, because she's ridiculous. And I met you back when we were doing the residency at Hyde.
Yeah.
Which was
2015.
Which was, it hasn't been that long. That's crazy. Yeah. 5 years. Happy 5 years.
Yeah.
And I remember that day, I think Shoshana had recommended you.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, we're going to have a tap dancer come to rehearsal. Cool. That could be good. That could be, I don't know how good she's going to be. You never know when it's, I didn't know a whole lot of tap dancers at the time. And then you just came in and you just blew everyone away, like to the point that everybody just stopped what they were doing in the whole place. This is just rehearsal, and they were just watching you. And it was like, holy cow, this girl has some of the best pocket of any tap dancer I've ever heard. Pocket, swinging. And you were just a swinging tap dancer.
We were both swinging, Scott Bradley. I'll never forget that. That was my favorite moment. I think we did Fancy first.
We did. And I just kind of looked over at you. I was like, whoa.
I remember the moment when I looked at you and you looked at me, and we just gave each other the biggest smile, and we were nodding our heads like, yeah, we're swinging.
It was amazing. I'm like, all right, this is somebody that I'm going to know for a long time. This is, She's got it going on. I want you to talk a little bit about your own story, but also I want to just back it up to just the tradition of mentorship in tap dance, because it seems, whenever I heard you talk about tap dance and your own personal mentors and everything, it seems to be a very vital component.
Absolutely. Yeah. We take so much pride as tap dancers, our training, and then also the legacy of it. So our teachers, and when you really have a quality tap teacher, that's always someone who really admires and respects the history of the art form. So all of our teachers, it's almost like ancestry, right? We know where we're coming from and who has studied with who by the way you dance. We have a lineage for sure. Okay. And that's a beautiful thing to see. And there's even like West Coast style and East Coast, just based on like who's trained with who and things like that. But it's a beautiful thing. And a lot of what's been passed down is the integrity of this art form and really treating it with respect and value, because we feel that, like you're saying, it's a niche art form. It used to be one of the most popular styles of dance ever, like the most popular from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. It was like everybody could tap dance, and every big band had a tap dancer, and that was like the thing. And so there was a bit of a decline, and then there's this comeback now, but we are still somewhat underground. But there's so many great tap dancers out there, and it takes opportunities like Postmodern Jukebox to give us that platform to be seen, so people know that we're still alive and well. Because I can't tell you how many times people have told me, "Oh, tap is a dying art form," things like that, and I'm like, well, didn't you just see me perform?
Right,
like,
yeah.
How
you
can
were
you
just
even
like
say
performing
that?
like a sold out show.
Like, it's not dead. It's just we just need bigger opportunities. So, which is why I'm so always grateful to you, Scott, and the whole Postmodern Jukebox family for having a tap dancer in the band always.
Well, we love having it. I mean, it so makes so much sense too. There's something about tap dance where it is this intersection of really drumming. I mean, we're a percussion instrument.
Right,
it is
right.
a percussion instrument.
Right.
But at the same time, there's also a dance component. There's a visual component.
Exactly.
And it's such a cool thing. So actually, I'd love to just take a step back and break it down. If you could break down kind of the Cliff Notes version of the different styles of tap dance. I mean, because I think a lot of people, they'll think tap dance, they think of, Broadway. I've seen like 42nd Street or whatever. I mean, are there different styles? Like you touched on that there's different lineages and everything. Are there also different styles?
In a sense, yes, there kind of is, and this is, a lot of things are up for debate within the tap community, because we're very purist and hardcore about what we do. But there is a Broadway style, and that style is, to be frank, very basic, very beginner. It's time steps, hop, shuffles, flat ball change. It's all the technique you learn in a very basic or beginner level tap class, which is so interesting that is the style for such a prestigious venue of Broadway. However, there have been shows that have featured killer choreographers like Savion Glover, and with really good quality tap dancing. So that's also been on Broadway too. So is that Broadway tap? You know what I mean? So there's things like that to consider. Yeah, and then there's like rhythm tap and more improvisational musical style of tap dancing, which is what I like to do, and focus on, of course, the dance element, but also the musicality, and really being one with the band and with the musicianship. And that's what I've been teaching a lot of my students about when I do my tap music project intensive, is like, let's start thinking like musicians and playing like a drummer.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So I think that's probably at odds with what most people think of when they think of tap dance. They don't really think of it probably as an instrument or as
correct.
Somebody capable of incredible musicality as well. Now,
Right.
did you learn strictly in that style of rhythm tap, or did you start from one style and move to that?
In a sense, I started from one style. So I started with Paul Kennedy, who is an incredible teacher here in LA. He's no longer with us, but he taught very traditional style of tap dancing, and that being that of showmanship. Of using your arms and really performing and wearing a shiny, beautiful costume. So it's funny because when I perform with Postmodern Jukebox, I always channel that style that I trained in initially with the Kennedy style of always having the arms out and presenting and being classy and all the showmanship. And then once he passed away, I studied with a man by the name of Jason Samuel Smith, who had just moved here from New York. And he was just in Noise Funk, Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk, the musical by Savion Glover. And so he exposed me to improvisation. And I was like, oh, this is something I really need to hone, a skill I need to hone as a tap dancer, because this is how we eventually get to express ourselves, is through improvisation. So all these elements that we study, all the basic tap steps and all the exercises, they're all to build a foundation for you to eventually be able to find your own style and then express yourself through improvisation.
Okay, so sounds just like jazz.
Yeah,
really, that's the same process. I mean, I think in jazz, it's maybe because it is a little bit probably broader. I don't think that people put as much stock in lineage, but certainly in the early days they did. There would be like this saxophone player came up studying with this person, or things like that. So it does sound like there are a lot of parallels to jazz, and obviously the emphasis on improvisation. I mean, that's a huge one.
Yes.
And that's one that I think kind of positions it in such a unique world. It's such a unique space. You've gone to jazz jam sessions and you'll show up as a tap dancer. Like, what's the reaction like when you just tell them like, hey, I'm just here to tap dance with you guys?
Well, it depends, because this is a constant conversation that us tap dancers are having, is like, what do people know about us? And so if you go and they know what's up, then they'll welcome you with open arms, be like, come on, sit in. But if they don't know what's up, they'll be like, tap dancer, I don't know. Or they'll be like, maybe, or I guess so. And then you tap, and then they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Come back every week. And so
it's like a little bit of sales as well.
Yeah. You kind of have to prove yourself in a sense.
Interesting.
But I'm not mad at that. And that's also something that I have to teach my students too, is like, don't just go to a jam and think you can just tap dance and do that. Because I used to go to a jazz jam here in Leimert Park at the World Stage. It's a jazz jam that happened every Sunday, and it was all ages. So I went as a teenager. And the first time I went, the host of the jam was very hesitant to let me tap dance, but eventually she was like, okay. And so I did, but I didn't know anything about form. I didn't know about a jazz standard having a form, and that I need to only solo over that form. And maybe I shouldn't tap over a sax solo. So like certain protocol I didn't know, because I wasn't taught that. So I tapped over everyone. I was like, this is my song, and I'm tapping over, and everyone's trying to get their solo in, and I just kept tapping. But no one ever told me, don't do that. And then eventually I had to learn that wasn't the necessarily right etiquette for that situation. So that's what I teach now.
I had the same experience. I think I was like, maybe 14 or 15 or something like that, and went to some kind of jazz. It was like a jazz camp that they were doing at Moravian College. And I went in and was playing everything I knew. I was playing over everybody. I was playing like stride piano stuff, like, for no reason where it didn't apply. And they just kind of pulled me aside. Very nice people. They pulled me aside. They're like, hey, so like all that stuff you're doing, like playing stride over them, don't do that anymore. It was like, come on, let them have their time to shine. Like that's the give and take. And then that's when I realized, light bulb moment. This is a conversation. This is
exactly.
We're making music together. It's not. It's good to learn that early on in life, so you don't look like a jerk later on.
Well, I think where I was coming from was because all I knew was the tap festivals. So at a tap festival, you would there would be a concert where all the star faculty would perform. And in the show, there would be a band. So I knew that tap dancing with a band was like the tap dancer's thing. But keep in mind, that's a tap festival. We're only there to specifically see the tap dancer perform. We don't go there to hear the piano player. We want to see the tap dancer. So all I knew as far as tap dance and live music was that the tap dancer dances the entire time.
Well, it's an easy mistake to make, Sarah Reich. And I'm sure they've forgiven you by now.
Yeah, but this is what I teach in my intensives now. So I can now teach this to tap dancers before they even go to a jam, so that they know how to handle themselves.
No, totally. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. And even just before the intensive, and again, so Sarah, for those of you at home, she runs this amazing tap intensive workshop. I mean, she does workshops all over the world. She has a collective of some of the best young up and coming tap dancers in the world that she has been teaching, and she's single-handedly, and I mean in so many ways, you're single-handedly preparing a whole generation of tap dancers to work and to have gigs and to contribute to this vital art form. But I want to know, you're so young. How old are you? You're like...
I'll be 31 in a few weeks.
31, okay. I mean, when I met you, you were already doing this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was, 5 years ago?
Yep.
It's so crazy to me that somebody this young has become such a mentor to so many people. Like, when did you make that switch? Or not even there's a switch, it was like an organic thing. When did you start adding mentorship to the list of things you did?
That's interesting. I guess when there was a generation that was seeking it. Because, I think around the time I met you, around 25, was when I was starting to see a new generation of kids coming up, of teenagers who were extremely passionate about tap dance and seeking that kind of mentorship, as I did when I was that age. So it's just a generational thing. But sometimes a generation could be 10 years or 5 years or even 3 years. That can even be a big difference within the tap dance world. But around that time was when I started to really see these up and comers killing it. And I had something to offer with my intensive that is not really fully offered outside of mine, which is focusing on musicality.
Right.
You know, there's intensives of tap festivals to learn all kinds of tap and combinations and tap. But this is like very specific to work with live musicians and to write original music, and then also to teach them how to read and write basic rhythm notation.
Right. And I think what I love most about it is that you know that it comes from a real authentic place with Sarah. You know, I think that I could imagine that there's probably some things that are like, okay, it's plug and play. It's like, let's get a tap teacher, and it's more corporate, or it's more, you know, you go to your tap intensives, and it is so clear the passion that you have for teaching and for educating others. And I'd imagine, now, did it start in such an organic, I would guess, if I had to guess, it probably started in a very organic fashion, right? You would just start mentoring a couple people just because you love spreading this art.
Sure.
And then was there a part that somebody was like, why don't you just do a master class?
Well, that was all my idea. I was like, I want to do this, so I'll produce it. You know, and I think a part of being a tap dancer is just being an entrepreneur. Like I said, because it is such a niche thing that it's like there aren't so many opportunities to get hired for. And so you have to produce them yourself. And then the students will come, and that way I could afford to like pay a guest teacher and pay the musicians, things like that. So it's just a matter of producing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's brilliant because you did find a niche that probably isn't covered, right? But teaching how to be a musician, I think that's something that wasn't really offered until, you know, at least in an organized way, until you came along and made this happen.
It's like yes and no. This is a very specific thing. So I'm not going to say I'm the only teacher teaching this stuff, because I know there are plenty of other teachers, and I've had teachers who have taught these things to me in class. But it is still a rare thing. Not every dance studio teaches this. This is why this is such a big deal. If every dance studio and every tap dance teacher and every little dance studio in the world knew about musicality and taught it, it wouldn't be such a rare thing. And then maybe it wouldn't even be such a rare thing in the music world to see a tap dancer show up. But this is what I mean. It's kind of a movement that we're getting going. And now there's actually even more intensives that offer this, and other teachers that are offering live musicians in class and music theory type classes. So it's cool. It's spreading, and everyone has their own take and own way of teaching the information. So it's really cool. And now I've started even now a teacher training program. So some of the students who took that first year of my intensive in 2015, because you were there, that was the first year when you came and played.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I had a blast.
First.
It was so much fun.
Yeah. So some of those kids now are like 19, 20 years old now. And so now they'll come, and I'll make them study what I teach. And I say, I want you to be a teacher in training and learn everything that I'm teaching. And I want you to format it in your own way. And eventually down the line, we can produce more intensives going on at the same time, but taught by other people and students of mine. So that's cool too.
It's become a machine. You've built a machine, which is turning out all these amazing tap dancers around the world.
Yeah.
Well, this is exactly the point that I wanted to highlight with you, is the fact that you were able to build this community in such a smart way, you know, to the point that you have other teachers coming up that are spreading, you know, your teachings essentially, and, you know, the tradition of tap dance and musicality. You had to think beyond yourself as an artist to do that. And I think that a lot of artists can get caught up, you know, worrying about just, you know, their own art themselves. You know, art can be a very personal thing. It can be a very introspective thing. But what you've done is you've taken it. You're not performing inward. You're performing outward, and you're really shining a light on all these people and inspiring them. And I think that is such a key thing for artists to understand, that this is the way that nobody gets successful just on their own and only just bringing themselves up, right? Like you have to bring other people up too.
Oh, for real. And honestly, I love this art form, like extremely passionately. It's like a religion to me. It's my everything. It's my absolute purpose. And so I do it out of 100% love and passion for the art form itself. Because we all have, as tap dancers, have to keep doing this to keep the art form alive and keep it fresh, keep innovating the art form. And I believe that the whole music world is a world that's a little bit untouched for us that we can really get into. Like, for example, my album. Like, not many tap dancers have ever recorded an album. Now, some have. Like, one of my favorite tap dancers was Baby Lawrence, and he released an album in the early 60s. And so I was like, wow, that's so awesome that back then he did that. And I'm like, I want to do that. And so I did it, but with the concept of creating original music. So I'm even like changing the mentality of the tap dancer, which is often, you know, like if you're at a dance studio, you dance to a track. You're always playing a track to tap to, or you do dance competitions and you're tapping to a track. But I'm like, why don't we be the artist? Let's us be the star of the track with our own rhythmic voice.
Now, was there some pushback? Did you get some pushback from people? It seems like a radical idea, right? Because a tap dance album is not something that, to most people, they can't even picture that.
That was the struggle after releasing it. I had a publicist shoot it out to many bloggers and, you know, radio stations and everything. And a lot of people didn't understand just by reading, you know, what is this all about? And they're like, I don't know. I'm not going to listen to it. But the few that did listen to it and did write about it, they even admitted in the article saying, hey, when I received this in the mail, I did not know what to expect. This is a tap album. I almost didn't even bother playing it. But then I listened to it and, oh my God, this is incredible. This is fresh. I've never heard anything like this. And so it was really cool to kind of hear that. But yeah, sometimes the first reaction to it is like, I don't know what that is, so I don't know.
So it's the same reaction as you go into the jazz club and, you know, sitting in. It's like the same.
In a sense, yeah. You know, like, and even my friends, even close friends of mine, I'm like, hey, I'm working on an album. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you sing. I'm like, it's a tap album, you know, but like it's even that with my friends who are just like, oh, a tap album.
Although you do sing, I've heard you sing. You got
I'm
a nice
working
voice.
on it. Thank you, Scott. I'm working on it. You know.
Well, I think that anybody that's dealing with a somewhat, for lack of a better term, niche subject like tap dance, and I mean, for me, it was, playing like ragtime stuff, you know, like I'm turning pop songs into ragtime or turning songs into old jazz. I mean, that there was a time where that was very, very niche, you know. Once it's popular, then everybody's on the bandwagon.
Exactly.
Know? So it's just.
But that's why, I have these like really big dreams for how we can go. Like I have so many colleagues of tap dance friends who are killer improvisational tap dancers and musicians, and I'm like, I want to hear your album, and I hope that me doing my album inspires you to do yours, and then eventually I would love to win a Grammy, or for any tap dancer to win a Grammy. Like let's go that far and get that much respect.
Absolutely. Well, that's something that is so interesting to me as I started getting into, you know, tap dance, not tap dancing myself, but watching tap dance.
I mean, your shim sham is it's
pretty solid.
Okay.
It's okay. You know, it's like a 5 or 6.
Sensible.
It's in there. But whenever we have a different tap dancer on tour, everybody has their own unique style, and it's almost to the point that now I think I could probably close my eyes and I can tell who's tap dancing. You know,
nice.
I feel pretty confident that I can identify certain things that everybody does, and then certainly the visual element. Everybody's got a different visual.
I love hearing you say that, because that is such a compliment. That's the ultimate compliment. But for someone to say, I can close my eyes. If I can close my eyes and listen to whoever tap dance, I would know who it is. Because
that's the metric with jazz, right?
True.
Like when we listen to jazz, you can listen to Lester Young and you know what he sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what Coleman Hawkins sounds like. You know, so it's that same thing, and I think that whenever you have something where people have an identifiable sound, I mean that's a start. That means you can do something with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, well, we'll talk a little bit more about how you approach the albums, because I think that's something that's pretty interesting. But let's talk also about just the role of tap dance and jazz in general. I mean, now it has some roots in jazz, and there were a lot of improvisational tap dancers that contributed to the history of jazz that maybe people don't know about.
Well, yeah. So almost every big band worked with all the tap dancers. So if we go back in time to the even 20s at the Cotton Club, late 20s with Duke Ellington, you know, there was Bill Bojangles Robinson. He was tap dancing there. Eventually, when Cab Calloway took over, you had the Nicholas brothers, who were really young there at the Cotton Club, at the Savoy Ballroom, in the Hollywood musicals and Broadway musicals. So it's like tap was always around live music, and the popular style of music at the time was jazz or big band swing. So again, it's just always been around, and it's what it's the traditional style of music for tap dancing. And then when you move on to like when the swing era was kind of wrapping up, and like bebop music was coming in the late 40s, Baby Lawrence, who I mentioned earlier, who created an album, he was one of the few that could really hang with the bebop guys. And so you'll even read in like Miles Davis's autobiography, he talks about Baby Lawrence and hanging out with the tap dancers. And then you have like Sammy Davis Jr., who is always around too, and keeping it alive in the 60s on the television, TV shows, things like that. But man, Jimmy Lunsford, he toured with tap dancers. I mean, all these greats were working with legendary jazz artists, like the cream of the crop. And then tap dancing, like the skill level back then was it was really, the competition was fierce because everyone could tap dance. So it's like, great, you can tap dance, I can tap dance. What else can you do? Well, I can sing. Oh, I can do acrobats. I can do the splits. I can do tap and jump rope. I can do tap and twirl a tray. So you almost had to be above and beyond to even get recognized because everyone could tap dance. That was like the bare minimum.
It was like a mandatory thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone knew the shim sham, or everyone knew how to do the time step.
Okay. So now, do you think that since then, has it gone over? Have you seen has it taken on a new role? Has there been some transformations in tap? It seems like what you're doing with your album certainly is something that, aside from Baby Lawrence, is pretty new. Mm-hmm. Is tap dance evolving? Would you say?
Yeah. I think the skill is evolving. So even though we're not as flashy as they were back then, none of us are really doing splits anymore. Plus, also, a lot of them were old enough and around to mentor us and say, don't do the splits. Like, our hips hurt.
You want a hip replacement.
Exactly.
Age 40.
So, right. So, we're not at that level like they were then as far as all of that extra stuff. But as far as the tap dancing skill and technique, it's crazy how much it's evolved. Oh, man. And the musicality, it's insane. What people are working on now, too. And even my teacher, Jason, he went to India and studied a lot of, like, Indian musician. And now he came back like, all right, everyone, we're going to tap in 7.5 time signature. I'm like, 7.5? I'm like, oh, my God. So it's like we're starting to, like, be exposed to a lot more really cool things like that. Yeah, and there's so many different choreographers.
What do you attribute that to? What do you think? Do you think that technology has aided that process? YouTube and things like that. Has it made it?
Yeah, I mean,
that more accessible to more people that are looking to learn.
I think so. Yeah, we're more connected now, so it's easier for people to kind of like see what's going on and be inspired by each other.
Right, and tap dancers, they all seem to know each other. It's an amazing thing.
We all know each other. We are a small community. We're tight.
And it seems to be a very, I would say, peaceful community, right? Like, there's not a lot of infighting. I don't see a lot of that in tap dance. She's like, off the record, we're going to talk afterwards. We're going to get all the dirt.
We say that we're like a dysfunctional family, like your typical family. Like, we all love each other. We'll always love each other. But, there's always that crazy aunt or the crazy cousin. Yeah. Yeah, but for real, we all do really love each other, and we are in each other's lives forever.
Well, it's probably, in some ways, you kind of have to. You have to be that way. When you have a small community like that, a niche community, I mean, it makes sense. It's almost like a survival mechanism to just be cool with each other and lift each other up.
Right.
I mean,
because we're all in it for the same thing. We all want, we want the same goal. We want to elevate the art form. So even if we don't agree with each other or each other's artistry, it's like, fine, this is my opinion, but you go do your thing because tap dance anywhere is good.
Well, there's a bigger picture, and I think that's something that you recognized early. I mean, especially if you were putting together master classes and tap intensive. I mean, I know how much work that takes. Like, that's got to be a crazy amount of work, and that you took some risks too. I mean, putting together an intensive, you don't even have a guarantee that you're going to make any money on that or not lose everything.
Right.
So that really shows that you put the emphasis on continuing the art form.
Right. And what's cool now is that it's getting bigger and bigger. There are more people tap dancing now than when I was growing up. So that's what's also really cool is that there's so many kids now that want to study. So it's almost like in a sense, a guarantee that you'll get some kids showing up to your thing, because there's so many kids everywhere that want to learn all the time.
Yeah.
And they have very supportive parents as well.
Right. And worldwide too.
Worldwide.
And you've pretty much done workshops in, how many countries do you think?
Over 50.
Over 50 countries. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you find it's bigger in certain areas than others?
Definitely. There's a big scene in Japan and a big scene in Brazil. Those are like the top two outside of America. Australia's got a decent scene. All over Europe. Barcelona is a big hub in Europe. Germany's got some tap going on. France. But when I was on tour with PMJ in Europe, I was almost teaching every day.
Well, what you did was so crazy. Yeah. That was nuts. I remember on the Australian tour, I think our plane touched down, and then you were like, see you guys, I got to go teach a class. And
however long that flight was.
It was like a 14-hour flight, and we're just looking at each other like, what is wrong with this girl? What's she doing?
I was like, see ya. It happened on both Australian tours. When we landed in Perth, the last one, I was like, bye, I'm going to taught a class. I got my cool little coffee, taught a class. But that's what's a beautiful thing.
You would teach the class, you would do the show, and then you'd also go to a jam session afterwards.
Right. So and then there'd be like the after party hang, the Tap fam, they'd want to take us out, Yep.
But I guess that really speaks to how tight the community is.
Yeah.
The fact that you could do that, you can land anywhere in the world, and you can find your friends.
And they're like family to me. Like when we say Tap fam, like it really does feel like family. I trust myself. I trust my life with anyone who is a tap dancer, like one that I know, in a sense, like because there's something about that bondage of having that passion for the same thing that you really feel connected to them. And that's always proven right.
Yeah,
beautiful
absolutely.
Thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the album, because I want to get back to that.
Cool.
Now, what was your process in just conceptualizing a tap album?
Well, I wanted to focus on original music. And I was like, when I tap dance, I hear these melodies in my head. Okay. And I was like, gee, I sure wish I would have stuck with piano so I could write it all down, like write out these music. But I was like, you know what, instead of that, I'll get together. I have so many musician friends. I'll just call my homies and we'll get together and we'll collaborate. And so what I started doing was getting together with various musicians and saying, hey, I'm going to create a tap step. I'm just going to improvise something organically. And then once I find something I like, I'm going to teach it to you. And by that, I mean, I'm going to scat you the rhythm, and I want you to play it back to me on your instrument, whether it being a saxophone, piano, cello, whatever. And so that's how all the songs are written, and all stemming from the musicality of the tap dancer. And so let's do that.
So that's how you make... So it's a tap feature essentially, but obviously it's not just tap dance.
Tap feature, but also tapping the co-writer of the songs.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like I provide the rhythm and then you would provide the melody, kind of thing.
Got
so it's like
a
collaboration, or I might even hum out a melody I might hear, and then we'll tweak it together, and then we'll come up with the arrangement. Like, okay, let's do a stop time section, but instead of one hit every 2 bars, let's do some syncopated hits. Let's write out let's write out those rhythms, things like that. So that's what's so fun to get to do, because I would do that anyway as a choreographer. So even just the word choreographer is like, well, really, I'm also a composer because I'm composing rhythms. But the word choreographer is most associated because we're tap dancers, but we're also tap dance percussionists.
Right.
So there's the whole thing of like the dancer word or the musician. Like, like, what do you prefer? So, like to be a dancer?
It's kind of the intersection of the two.
Exactly.
I mean, you're doing both.
So
you're
I could
choreographer,
say, exactly.
But you're also the composer.
Right.
Wow. So now is this, how did Baby Lawrence do his album? Was it the same tradition? Or was it
his
something different?
Was more so some standards. So there were kind of songs that were already written.
Taking existing material.
Exactly.
Kind of retrofitting it with tap.
And he had a nice, great little jazz band, and he had a saxophone player as well. I have a lot of saxophone on mine. And he played also around with texture. So he had a sand dance. And that's where I got the idea from my sand dance that we do together, and that My Baby Just Cares for Me.
Yeah, that was fun. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was so cool. So for those that didn't see the video that she did of this, she actually put sand sand down on the ground. And she was doing like a soft shoe type of thing. I'm probably butchering the description of it, but it kind of gave this almost like snare drum with brushes sound.
Right.
And
and I wasn't wearing tap shoes. I was wearing soft shoes so that you could really kind of hear the sand. So yeah, just playing around with texture as well. That was kind of fun. But also on the album, aside from the songs, I have a few vocal interludes from my mentors. So I'm also using it, of course, as an educational tool.
It's edutainment.
Clearly, I love being a teacher. And so I'm like, I want people to walk away or from listening to this knowing a bit of our history. So the mentors that I have speaking on it, the track is titled by their name, and people can hear their voices. And then I also have a track called The Groove that uses vocal excerpts from tap documentaries laid over on top of a beat that samples one of my other songs. So now you're listening to a beat that's produced, sampling tap dance, while listening to really cool like vocal excerpts from my heroes, tap dance legends.
It's so meta too.
Yeah.
There's layers to it. That's cool. So I gotta say that, it's such a creative idea for an album in the first place, but also the execution of it is so creative too. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of tap dancers that follow suit and start recording their own albums.
Man, I would love that. I would even love to have my own label as a tap music label.
Tap music label?
Yeah,
what would you call it?
Tap Music Productions. Boom.
Have
Have a Tap Music Project, Tap Music Productions.
There you go, Tap City.
Keep the TMP, and then it's like, I would love to help provide that for some of my friends that who I say, I would love to hear your album, and maybe they don't know how to even go about doing it because I didn't either. Just,
it's not as hard as you think. It's not
as hard as you think.
It's not as scary.
But it's still like a new endeavor if you don't have a label.
Yeah.
But what's so cool now is that you can be an independent artist and do it on your own. So literally YouTube how to put out an album, and there you go.
Yeah, well, that's one of my things that I always talk to people, and just like, especially when people still believe that there's prestige involved on being a record label, and it's like, okay, do you want to have prestige or whatever, like imagine prestige, or do you want to actually just make the thing and put it out? And, you don't need a label. You can do that. All the tools that you need are available for free, essentially, on the internet. You can get worldwide distribution by putting something on YouTube and Spotify, and you can do a Kickstarter, you can do a Patreon. There's so many tools. It's such an exciting time to be an independent artist, too.
Exactly.
And it's almost like if you do go with a label, you're kind of depriving yourself of the experience of just the excitement of learning, all these skills and getting to really watch something take off in real time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my rant on that. But we should close with we'll do a second part. I would wonder what your advice is to anybody that's in kind of a similar niche field. Maybe it's not tap dance, maybe it's ragtime, maybe it's whatever. What is your advice to somebody that maybe has this mistaken belief that this is as high as I can go, right? Like, I'm doing this thing, not enough people like this. It's too small a community. What's your advice to take it to the next level?
I think to have vision is really important. So you have to have a creative mindset to think about what hasn't been done before, or what could whatever you're doing use to be fresh again. Because it's really important to not get stuck in trying to follow other people's paths. I think if you create your own path, then you're on the top of the game in that path. You're like already pioneering something new.
You've already won.
Yes, but it's also triple harder. Triple the work and triple the stress. But it's worth it. And so you just got to check in with your passion and think like, am I super gung-ho and passionate about what I really want to do? And if so, then truly believe it and love that. I think for a while, I used to be ashamed, almost like embarrassed that I was so passionate about tap dance because it wasn't the coolest thing. And so I was like, I love this thing, but I had a shirt that said I Heart Tap. And I would wear it to school like, okay, today's the day I wear my I Heart Tap shirt. But I never took off my jacket because I was still too shy and nervous about it. But over the years, I began to like really own my pride. So as long as you own your pride for whatever you're doing, and you stick by it, and you treat it with integrity, and you proceed with integrity and share, as long as you're being honest too, that's going to show, and that's when all the blessings will come. And gratitude, of course, comes with that as well.
Right. No, that well said. I mean, it comes down to authenticity, and if you have an authentic passion for something, that's contagious. And I think
is.
You can look at it in the way that, okay, I'm only one of 100 people that do this one thing. But then you can also look at it like, wow, there's 100 other people that are really into this. I wonder how many more people are out there,
Yeah.
And certainly now, because of the internet and the just explosion of genre and the explosion of types of videos that we see on YouTube and stuff, I mean, there's a community for everything. I mean, I didn't know that what unboxing videos were. There's a whole, there's millions of people that follow unboxing videos, which is they buy a product and then they just take it out of the box. It's like when you buy like a new MP3 player. People don't even use, that's such a bad example because nobody has an MP3 player anymore. But we're going to stick with it. You buy a new MP3 player and you take it out of the packaging and you got a good feeling and it's like nicely packaged. And I guess that's the idea of unboxing.
So people film
videos.
themselves unboxing things.
Yeah,
and
they're making millions. There are some channels that are making millions of dollars just unboxing products. It's crazy.
I love it. But there's a vision for that. Who would have known? And that's the thing, is like you never know who's going to really want your product. There's so many people out there in the world, and you never know who's going to support you and want what you have to offer. Absolutely. But you have to do it to find out.
This is true. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop it here, but we'll keep talking after this, okay?
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.